we say grow with Gray, we mean Gray gets you where you want to go. With more than 100 markets and top-rated stations from coast to coast, you will find the perfect fit. Cover the nation's biggest events, create award-winning content, and tell stories that matter to your community. Gray invests in investigative journalism, a culture of asking questions and finding solutions. Gray's growth-focused, customized training is designed to help you succeed and get you to the next level. Gray knows you deserve the best benefits in the business. Seriously. And bosses who understand work-life balance. So get noticed, get going, and start growing. Grow with Gray.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Dale. I am Vice President of Recruiting for Gray Television, and I am thrilled to be here with you to talk about story pitches. In my 10 years as news director, this was the #1 challenge, not just for every young MMJM reporter that I hired, but some established long-term reporters as well. And I'm so excited to talk with you tonight about story pitches and to do it with Stephen Cruz, who's another one of our talent acquisition specialists, and Estelle Parsley, who is our news director at WRDW in Augusta. And for those that don't know Estelle builds strong journalists. And I have talked with her before, and we've done a similar presentation, and I'm thrilled to be able to share that with you tonight. So we'll go ahead and get going. With the presentation, let me... Oops, wrong one. There we go. There's everybody. Please excuse the director on this because, hey, guess what? It's me, and I'm a producer. So, Estelle, why don't you tell us a little bit before we begin about your time at WRDW, and then we'll just launch straight on into the presentation.
So I'm a rarity in TV news. Augusta was actually only my second station. I started out reporting in North Carolina. And I came here as a weekend anchor, producing my weekend newscast and then reporting 3 days a week. I love the area. Through keeping in touch with people that started in the business when I did, we all complained about cars that didn't work or equipment. And I found out that there's no perfect station, only the call letters changed. And so I really felt like I had a lot of opportunities to do some things here in Augusta, and I've never thought that the size of the market should dictate the quality of newscast. So I've stayed here, and I've kind of moved up to anchor. I ran the desk for about 6 months, executive producer, assistant news director, and now news director for a lot of time, couple of decades. So.
And, you guys have had so much success. I love what you said, that the market size doesn't dictate the quality of work. I think you've won, 3 national Murrows in a row? Am I right? Is it 3?
6.
6. Sorry. Some are lucky to win 1 national Murrow, like you're like in a lifetime. So 6 in Augusta, Georgia. And remind me again what size market Augusta is.
I think we're 110. We're 110, but we were described one time as punching above our weight class, and I loved that because that's exactly what everybody here strives to do. I mean, it's we can dictate how we do what we do every day. If we got a strong enough story pitch, that's what we get to do that day. And so I think that's very empowering, for reporters, for anchors, for investigative folks, for the photographers. So we really, we want to say the sky's the limit. Sometimes the resources aren't the limit, but certainly the passion is. We've got a good group here.
And I'll also love the fact that you describe yourself as news director / investigative producer. It kind of drives home something I've always thought. Everyone in the newsroom is a journalist. No matter your title, we are all journalists at heart. And no matter if I am recruiter, if I am a news director, I'm never going to change. I'm a journalist. And that is and it's what we need as an industry. It's what we need and more of in our country. So I'm going to go ahead and push to the first slide, and we'll just get started.
Sure. So, I always ask people when I hire them, and I hire a lot of entry level. Being in Market 110, we hire a lot of entry level here, and I always ask them, what is it about journalism? What is it about TV news that you like? And a popular answer I would always get is, well, I like to tell people stories. And so I would always say to people, before you can tell a story, you have to find one. This little art on the side was a comment that one of my folks in the newsroom, we were talking, and it's like, the last thing we want is for the young people in the newsroom to kind of be like the baby birds in the nest, where they're kind of waiting for somebody to drop things to them. We want them to be empowered to pitch stories and to have some, input on what they're passionate about and what they're going to spend their day doing. I'm a big believer of, you're going to be most passionate about the stories that interest you and the ones that you pitch. So we really, try to ignite that fire. With that said, we really preach here, don't rely on the assignment desk or the events or the daily planner. Obviously, if somebody's sending the assignment desk a news release, it's not just going to us. And, that's sort of the low-hanging fruit. That's kind of the price of entry in a newscast of, kind of getting those things that are going on that day. But the real crux, I think, of the value of a reporter is what they bring to the table is going to be the news and the information, the enterprise, reporting. What can they bring that nobody else is bringing?
And the news release truly is written by someone who wants it to come and to be presented in a certain way.
Right.
The news release is not the news that's in there. In fact, many times the news in a news release is what's not mentioned.
Exactly. So the second point there was, not all news releases are news. So it's kind of like, well, how do you know that? If somebody pitches something on a news release, it's like, well, how do we know that? How do we know that? So it's independently verifying that. And as you said, a lot of times it's what's not in there. It's what the agency, the government, the school system is not putting in that news release. And it's not that we're out to find negative things, but we really want to present a full story. That's what the viewers rely on us to do. The third point I have there is public relations is not journalism. Nothing against health reporters at all. We're in a very medical intensive market. So we a lot of times are getting those things from the public relations department where they've set up the doctor, they set up the patient, and they tell you about something that's going on. And so that's not really digging. That's not really finding something. That's something that's going to go to everybody. We'll have a little bit of an example of that later on. But public relations is not journalism. That's what they want you to know. The viewers are relying on you to tell them everything. And then the last one there is when I talk to people, I'm like, okay, it's a hypothetical. You've been hired for a job in Augusta. You start pitching stories, next Monday. How do you acclimate yourself to the market? How do you find sources? And one of the things they always like, well, I'm calling the PIOs. And I always say, the PIO is not really, a good source for you because the PIO is talking to everybody. I also warn people sometimes if the PIO is doing favors for you, that the PIO somewhere down the line is going to want to, quid pro quo, they're going to want you to do a favor. And if the PIO is there to make their agency look good, which I always think that acronym is kind of interesting. PIO is not a public information officer. It's really the PR for whatever agency, the sheriff's department, the police department, the what have you. So, your sources are not going to be the PIO. The PIO.
I used to always warn our reporters, listen, we want to be friendly. We want to be professional. But keep in mind, at the end of the day, the PIO isn't our friend. I used to hear this a lot. It's like, if we do this story, they're never going to tell us anything again, especially when it came to different stories about involving public agencies and crime. I'm like, really? They're not going to tell us who gets arrested? That's kind of their whole job, and it's public record. So that would, something to remember is that, with public relations, it isn't journalism. You're not in the public relations business. Your job is to serve the viewer. Your job is your job is not to make the PIO happy. It's not to make a public agency happy. Your job is to be the voice of someone who doesn't have one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And let's face it, the PIO is never going to be happy for long because, and it's the little things that generally get them upset the most. I mean, little things like, we're not bringing the ice rink back this year. Well, don't report that yet. Well, we've already got this information. And, those are the little things that make them mad. So.
Yeah.
And for those of you who do not know my background and Stephen's background, we mentioned Estelle. All three of us are former news directors. I was news director for almost 10 years. And Stephen, how long were you news director?
For 6 years.
Okay, so you're getting a lot of thoughts and feelings about story pitches from someone who, oh my gosh, between the three of us, what is this? Oh my God, how many years are we getting close to of having to deal with story pitches? I don't want to add it up. Let's just strike that question from the record.
Not the big contributor there.
Yeah, so I don't know, Estelle. So just, so I mean, this is a road that has been a consistent struggle for many young people and many established journalists for a very long time. It's not a new thing. Chances are that if you're struggling, you're not alone, and it's not just your newsroom. So
absolutely. One thing that we talk to the MMJs about, reporters about, is sources are all around you, and the people that are your sources, the people you talk to, are never one-dimensional. The parent that you talk to is not just a parent. They're a consumer, whatever their job is. So when we talk to people, sometimes the best way to get story ideas is when you're out on another story. Find out everything that you can about the people that you meet in the field. Where they live, is there a traffic problem there? And a lot of times can be brought up during that uncomfortable setting up the camera on the tripod and everything. You're kind of talking to them. It's like, oh, where do your kids go to school? Give and get that cell number and add keywords to that contact. We did when we first did this presentation month and a half or so ago, I kind of put Jennifer on the spot. And I said, okay, Jennifer, I'm interviewing you. And as I'm putting the camera up or taking the camera down, I'm saying, so how long have you lived out in this neighborhood? I'm going to put you on the spot. Jennifer, how long have you lived?
Almost 6 years.
It's a popular area. Do you have kids? Do they have schools around?
I do. I have a daughter.
Okay. A lot of growth in this area. I bet the schools are getting kind of crowded. Have you seen traffic?
You really wouldn't believe it, because they have, I live in Charleston, and, I think the last estimate's 43 people a day moved here. I have literally watched in the past 6 years as my daughter's school went from being kind of under capacity to over capacity, and how they've had to they've been busing kids in from even faster growing areas. I chose this neighborhood because it was one of the few ones that I was set with. And now I'm really surprised that I'm having to deal with that overpopulation too.
So I just got 3 story ideas from Jennifer there. So one of the things that you can do is, when you're, it's like, you're really helpful. Gosh, I really like a lot of the input that you're doing. I'm going to give you, can you give me your cell phone? I'm going to put my number in here. And so you're giving me your cell phone, and I'm typing my number in there. And then I'm hitting dial real quick, and I'm going, yep, okay, I got it. And then when I leave there's a note section in the iPhone. I recommend every MMJ reporter, whatever, put as much as you can about Jennifer Dale in there. Mom lived in the area.
By the way, this is brilliant, people. If I was a news director, I would have told my MMJs to do this, and back then, and I didn't know to. So if you're a reporter, for goodness sakes, help yourself and do what Estelle's talking about.
Yeah, so I'm an iPhone person, so there's a section in notes, and I'm writing everything. The neighborhood that you live in. You've got a daughter; she goes to this school. Anything that you can tell me where your spouse works, and anything at all. You've got a mother, and you're interested in like elderly care. Anything at all that comes up in that conversation, I am putting in there. And I've told her, hey, put your number in there. She put her number in there. I hit mine and I'm not, being sly about it. I'm like, okay, Rang, okay, I got your number. And so now I have her number too, in case it was an email thing. You can then, like, if you're like looking for a contact, that search bar, you can put anything in there, teacher, student, neighborhood, and it's going to pop up Jennifer. So please do that. Nobody, business cards are great. Notebooks are great. But I mean, I think we all live with these, right? We're always electronically tethered to our to our phone. So I would recommend that you do that.
Estelle, Jennifer's heard this story, but there's a reporter in Dothan. His name's Ken Curtis, and he's 73 now. And he's the oldest reporter in Alabama. He thinks he may be the second oldest in the nation. But the first question he asked on an interview is not name and spelling. It's what's your phone number. He's going to have a phone number of everybody. And I think the other thing here is a lot of us on the recruiting side have added the Blink app. So it's real quick to just share a QR code with these people, get their information, and you've got it stored in your phone as well.
So the third part there, the sources are often people that you won't interview on camera. Sources are people, I think, that know where the bodies are buried. They maybe they're former employees of a company, or they're retired. A lot of times, if you have sources, just understand, a lot of times when you're reporting, like, well, can I interview you with that? No, I don't want to be on camera. And you quickly kind of like toss that person aside. Well, I'll never get an interview from them. Your sources are often the ones that tell you the stories that that don't end up in a news release, or that people that work for an organization are not going to interview you. They kind of tell you where to go to dig. So just don't think of your sources as only people that will be on camera. A source can be anybody. Nourish the relationship, earn your trust, and keep the trust. You never want to break the trust of a source. You don't want to call somebody up, a source, or even somebody that you interview on camera, frequently, depending on what your beat is. You never want to call them up when only you need something. So, if Jennifer were one of my sources, or somebody that I interviewed quite a bit, I would remember, oh, she's got a daughter. Her daughter was, went to this school. Or sometimes if I'm really bad on names. So if I'm going to go to some place where there are going to be a lot of people there, I will scan my Facebook page. And if it's somebody that I may see once a year, I may look and say, oh, wow, their son just, got some recognition at college or whatever. And I'll use that. And that's for my lapse of a bad memory and bad with names. But that's a way. It's like, you're not just going to somebody. It truly is a relationship. You have to care about people. You have to care about your community. And you can't just be in it to get a story that day and then move on. I mean,
and it can also just to be easy as a text every now and then, same thing, just a text, and keep in mind, like, again, keep in touch with people long term. My first news director job was in Johnson City, Tennessee, and it was 11 years ago. In October. And do you know that I've been gone for 6 years. I still keep in touch with one of my sources from there, because not because I have anything that, I care about him as a person. It's just about building that relationship, and you never know when something's going to happen, but you don't do it because you need something. Nobody wants to be a tool for someone else. You don't want it if it's you. The sources don't want it. You don't want to be treated that way by your boss or by anybody you're in a relationship with. So sources shouldn't be any different. The golden rule comes into play with sources as well.
Absolutely.
And I think we were at Northwestern with Lee Zurich earlier this semester, Jennifer, and he made a comment about sources, that there is one particular source that he has that he stays in contact with every single day. He said it may not be for a story purpose, but just to chat, just to let them know that they're still there, and it's more than just needing information. And then on the flip side, sometimes you have to play the role of good cop, bad cop in a newsroom. A reporter and there was a big court case, and one of the key players in that case really likes me, but does not like the reporter. So I would play the good cop role and get the information that we needed, and then the reporter would go and get the other information from the others in that case, and we'd put it together. It's not always going to work to your advantage with every source that the newsroom has.
And that's why, too, it's so important that you have individual sources. Again, I was a news director. I wasn't a reporter. But you know what? I took it very seriously that I should personally have sources. And And I did. So, I mean, I don't, it doesn't matter what role you're playing. When you're listening to this, you're a journalist. You got into this business for a reason. And so you should nurture that relationship, build it, and care about helping people at that, what was it? It was at CMA. It was Carice Jackman, who's one of our investigative reporters with Investigate TV in DC. She said, real recognizes real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. So if you're real and you truly care, people respond to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This was an example that I was presented at a Gray workshop, and I thought it was just ideal. So this is one that I've kind of passed along. I give a credit there to Gray, but it was sort of a case study of like, okay, the cops demand a pay raise and they're threatening to strike. What would you do in a story like that? Well, if you're kind of a new reporter and it's certainly a competent story, you're going to call the PIO for information, and you're going to set up the interviews with the official and the cops. You're probably going to shoot some video of the police department building and some patrol cars, and then you're going to use some file video of police on the scene. And is there anything wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's certainly not going to get you recognized. It's likely not going to get. It's fine. Yeah, it's just fine, right? So you want to punch above your weight class. So digging for the how and the why, sort of the who, what, when, and where are just, kind of the basics of things. We often say the how and the why. I mean, we all live, when you think about what your competition it isn't always just the television station across the street. It's social media. If something happens at 10 o'clock in the morning, kind of the basic information is going to already be out there on social media. And so, certainly we're better than the people on social media, right? We're journalists, we're diggers, we're going to find that information. So you're kind of digging for the how and the why. And some examples of how to take that story to a next level would be, how does the police department officer pay compared to other city employees? So they'll kind of look at position by position. How have other city employees been compensated over the last 5 years? How does police pay compare to the top 4 similar sized cities in the region? And how's the safety of the community really going to be affected by this cop strike? Some examples of this, if you've kind of creating your own library of information, many cities, counties have their budgets online. If they don't, request a copy and have it printed. If you're for us, we will often look at, okay, what is Macon, Georgia doing? What is Columbus doing? Sometimes what is Savannah doing?
Do a whole session just on what documents you should request and keep in your toolbox. I mean, because it's just so nice to be able to pull those out and use those for context in a story.
And, and on the one in the bottom, I think, the questions that you're sort of, that maybe asking, it's like, well, if they do strike, how is this going to impact the zones? How many people do you have per zone now patrolling? What does this mean? And suddenly, if I find out where I live or where I work, it goes from 6 officers patrolling, in a shift to 2 officers maybe patrolling in a shift. That's going to really impact me. That's certainly going to impact me if whether or not I'm going to the convenience store at 9 o'clock at night. Certainly if I work at the convenience store, it really just hits home with that. Many times the part of the day, getting information like this can take a lot of time. How much time do we all sit around, wait for that information? So if you get the budgets of other cities, counties, what have you, and you have that, you're not waiting on that information. It's not posted online.
I would always say at the start of every year, I would always request salary information for everyone in the biggest municipalities that I served, and then, then we would have that and we would be able to go back and get that. If you're in certain places like here in South Carolina, there's a whole lot of things online that you already have access to, not salary data, but different things that where to go. I mean, that's half the battle, I think, of story pitches, is knowing what's available and what's out there to request.
Mm-hmm.
Which I may have jumped ahead in the slide. I vaguely remember one from the next.
That's all right. And it is, with Georgia, it's like the salaries are online, but just, and kind of like in the downtime, I mean, I just can go down the rabbit hole looking for information and looking for information and looking for information. And one of my mentors very early said, the story is in the numbers. The story is often not the numbers, but the story is in the numbers. And I always say, if somebody says, oh, it seems like more people are talking about this, or wow, this is really becoming a bigger problem. I always say, well, how can we quantify that?
What's the data? Like, what can we use?
How do we know that? Because people are talking about it. And so, again, that's another example of having that information, helping to quantify the story.
And then too, I think it's also helping focus the pitch. If there are any Live 5 reporters on listening to this, then you might shudder with the memory of what I'm about to say. But I'm a big believer in the 3-word summary. You should be able, if you want to focus a pitch, you should be able to sum it up in 3 words. And if one of them is a verb, you're usually good to go. If your story pitch is police pay update, oh my gosh, that sounds so boring. But if there is a verb in there, like officers pay cut, something's happening. That is a strong pitch with a clear focus, and you can go to town on that. Many, generally I've hired a lot of reporters over the years, and I think every single one of them have hated it when I said, so what's your 3 words? Every single one. But let me tell you, if you can do it, then you are so valuable. All right.
Okay, so the story is rarely the event. The story is the impact. And that's one thing that we preach here a lot is, we don't cover the event, we cover the impact. This young man over here is Craig Allison. He joined us right out of school, and he's our city government reporter. City government is wonderful, and city government is hard because, the story isn't the commission meeting. The story is not just, it can be boring if you're like, oh, let me go to the commission meeting. And then, there's like this bad audio because the mic never quite picks them up. Sometimes they let you put the microphone up there. So the meeting itself is not going to be the story unless they're angry, they're yelling at each other and they're throwing chairs at each other. Then, okay, you got a story there.
Which has been known to happen in Charleston. At least at the school board meetings.
So one of the examples that I have here is that the commission was trying to decide on what to do with downtown streetlights. And the reporter knew that was on the agenda, that someone was going to speak about that, but he went to that area. And so in this video, if we have any photographers on here, forgive me, because we go from day to night, day to night, day to night. So there's not that continuum there, but the reporter's trying to make a point on that. So he knows that they're going to be talking about streetlights. The story is not going there as, Joe, public citizen, goes up there and speaks into this, and then the commission just talks about it, and then they do the hand vote. But it's really, or it's really not going there that day of, and then, okay, let me just kind of take some pictures. Streetlights are a big issue at night. And so before the commission is meeting, he's going out there and just finding out just how bad it looks. He also looked at, where were the accidents that happened. You'll actually see where some people ran into the street lights. But again, Craig's been with us less than 2 years. And I think this story is probably about 6 months ago. I think he did a pretty good job on it. So
all right, I'm going to
play that one.
But that's just where it's spotty on Green Street. When you come down here past 5th Street, it's lights out.
My wife was concerned because coming back home, she felt like she almost hit someone, couldn't see them until the very last second.
Patrick Berkshire and his family have lived on Green Street for the past 7 years, and they haven't seen anything like this. And it's because they can't see much of anything at night.
I do remember being nervous during Halloween. I was out trick-or-treating with my daughter and a group. And yeah, we're all getting our cell phones out and flashlights, trying to avoid, I'm tripping over hazards.
I was surprised when the mayor and commissioners sort of kind of put it back on me, like, you need to be more philanthropic. You need to rally local organizations to help these things happen.
Another Green Street neighbor, Kevin DeLagle, who walks his dog Archie here, tried to bring the issue up to city leaders at this week's commission meeting. He says the speed of cars coming off Calhoun, combined with the dark, leads to traffic poles, even monuments, getting hit.
That this is something that is happening, it seems like every other month, and it's going to continue to happen again.
It seems like there should be some sort of solution aside from, I guess we'll just wait and see when someone gets run over.
Now, Commissioner Jordan Johnson did mention a plan, and he did talk to residents here in the Old Town about that plan. But when we reached out to him for a timeline and more details, he was unavailable.
So there's the follow-up, right? The timeline and the details of this. Again, city government can be a tough beat because it's a lot of meetings, and this is, what happens in a meeting. Decisions are made, the impact is felt outside. So I thought Craig did a really good job with that. The other one to kind of share with you is, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I mean, who doesn't know that, right, Jen? You're like when somebody pitches that, does somebody not know that? So it's really kind of separating a PSA from a story. There's certainly there's nothing wrong with doing a story about breast cancer during October, during any time. Sometimes if you don't do a story about whatever month it is or whatever week it is, it looks like you've kind of missed it or you don't care. And this one was actually done by somebody who is not an entry-level reporter. She's actually part of our I-team. She anchors our 5 o'clock, and she is one of our I-team reporters.
Awards.
She's one of a few awards.
What was it? What was it you guys were nominated for? 13 Emmys or something recently?
I think, 13 Emmys. We only have 4 though. We compete against Atlanta, so it's a tough region. But hats off. We just loved it.
I mean, I think if anyone can take something, like I'm going to launch this video after this, but I think everyone on this call should be united in the fact that they really don't want to compete against Estelle's newsroom.
Oh, stop. But we'd love you to join my newsroom. That's another
There
story.
you go. That's like what's the other half of that? If you can't beat them, join them. And
anyway, so this was a story. Yeah, this was a story. It's like, what are we going to tell people that they don't know? What specifically about our area? And so this is one that that she worked on, and I thought it was excellent.
All right, here it goes.
1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in her life. 1 in 8. That goes for both black women and white women. CDC data shows it happens at the same rate, but the death rates, the I-team found that tells a much different story, especially when it comes to black women in our area.
As a working mom,
I was busy,
Angela Prince always put everyone else first.
I would bust my kids around all over the place, make sure they're fine, make sure my husband's fine, still go home and take care of everything.
Everything, it seems, but herself, even when she found a lump in her right breast.
So I was like, it's probably nothing. And I was just too busy to make a doctor's appointment, which is crazy, right?
Sure, she sees that's crazy now, but at the time, she didn't think she had time until she was let go at work.
Well, I guess I have time to go to the hospital. So I made an appointment.
Turns out the lump, now the size of an orange, wasn't nothing. It was breast cancer, and it was pretty advanced.
It's stage 4. It spread to my lung. It was in my lymph nodes.
Treatment had to be aggressive. Angela had a double mastectomy followed by radiation and 6 rounds of chemotherapy.
I don't know if you noticed, but I love my hair, right? And that was my signature. I'd have big curly hair all the time. That's my signature. And when it started falling out, I really I'm sorry, tear it up. I lost a part of myself. And, it's so superficial hair is, right?
When it was all gone, she decided not to wear a wig and to make her bald head her new signature. This photo was taken after her final chemo treatment.
I was 43 at the time. I was pretty young to get breast cancer.
Not according to a study at UNC Chapel Hill. Researchers found a pattern with breast cancer where white patients peak in their 60s, but non-white patients peak in their 40s.
We have some of the highest death rates from breast cancer right here in this region.
That's why Dr. Michelle Lee says she moved to Augusta last year to head up breast imaging at AU.
Most women across the country, the #1 cancer killer is lung cancer. Not here and not if you're black. If you're a black woman in Augusta, your #1 cause of cancer death is breast cancer.
So first question, it's probably going to be, no, that was not turned in a day. But, I think for anchors, special project producers that may be on this call, those are things that you can look for of doing. It's like, some anchors are like, oh, they have to do something once a quarter or whatever. What are you going to do? You'd be surprised how some of those topics that we all hear about, there's new information coming all the time. That story had so much interest in our market, as you can imagine. You look at the demographic in that, a woman in her 40s, and in the Augusta area, the population is 51% African American within Augusta, Richmond County. So that story just really resonated, and it had not been told. Some of the information that you saw there is that she'd found online that was from another study. So that is kind of an example of taking one of those PSA type subjects and really doing a deeper dive to it.
And if you think about too, like, I love the way that kind of it was structured, because I would get pitched a story for some sort of an awareness month or some sort of day. And my question always back to the reporter is, like, so what's new about this? How are you going to do this story? So I just don't pull the story that we did last year out of the video file and just play that one back. You tell me how you're going to make it different. And that's really the key. And that's the depth. Like, anyone can parrot back a press release. Anyone can hold up that phone and show that video that you shot of a fire. A journalist gives context. And that's what you have to do, especially with, again, I bet if we have covered a breast cancer awareness story once, we've covered it a million times. Should we continue to? Absolutely, because it affects so many people. But we have to figure out, like, what is that new nugget? What is selling that story forward? The first 3 letters of news is new. So what's new about it?
Absolutely. I can't stress enough, start the day prepared. And of course, these are, talk about digging out from the files from years ago. That's me. Some big hair and some big shoulder pads. But, if I could tell myself, my 25-year-old self, anything, it would be that the most days are like a funnel, right? At the beginning of the day, you've got all this time. And then as things get closer to news time, it's like those sands just go through that so quickly. So that you have to go in with an idea. I'm a big believer of, when people are away from work, I want them to relax and whatever. And story pitches in the first 6 months, as Jennifer likes to say, you may question your life choices. The great thing of it is story pitching does become easier. It does become easier. What doesn't become easier is going into a meeting without a story pitch and catching some flack for it. So, it's kind of, you do the work, and it's just that you're kind of doing that work at a different part of the day. Maybe you're doing it later in the day. You're doing it while you're on an interview. You're looking for some information in between calls. But going in the day with just the idea.
I always tell my reporters, make one call today to help the you of tomorrow. Just one call, 2 calls, something. So you're not every day trying to rebuild this mountain. Like, because you're going to be miserable if every day you're coming in going, what should I do today? And I agree about take your time off. Like, I'm not asking you to work off the clock. Absolutely not. I'm not asking you to work on vacation, but I'll tell you what I do. And I do it to this day in my role is, I just keep a checklist on my phone. When I think about something, I mean, like, oh, you know what? I need to do this. I just put it on my to-do list on my phone so I can when I get back to work. So just think about how you can use your time a little bit more wisely, because you are going to question your life's choices if you're coming in at 9 o'clock every day and wondering what you're going to put on the news at 5 o'clock, or worse, 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
The bottom quote there is, I had to include this because I love it. Sarah Lusk is our assistant news director here. And, she says the morning meeting is not about your hopes and dreams. So it's not like what you hope will come through, what you dream your video is going to be. But, it's what are you going to be able to turn in the day? And that's really what a pitch is. The stronger that your pitch can be, the more likely you're going to be able to do the story that you're pitching. So that takes us to this. And you talk about Jennifer, that people didn't like your 3-sentence focus of a story. When we first started doing story pitches, people were just like, looked at me like I had lobsters coming out of my ears. But when I would do exit interviews with people, I would always say, okay, finish this sentence. I wish Estelle knew, fill in the blank. And I had this MMJ from years ago, just such a talented person, but just her eyes got really big, and she goes, the morning meetings are scary. And you know what? And I'm not somebody that shames anybody. I'm not, the morning meeting is a safe space, right? So that just kind of surprised me that she said that. And she's a force to be reckoned with. I'm thinking that Miranda Parnell was scared of a morning meeting, but I can still, to this day, remember her sitting in my office and her eyes like, the morning meetings are scary. So, it's to me, it's like, I believe that people won't do what you want them to do because, number one, they don't know how to do it. Number two, they're not quite sure what you're asking to do. And I think that's it for most reporters. There's also a number three, they don't want to do it. And that's a whole other webinar.
That's a different issue.
So I thought, and that's important. Every market can vary a little bit. Maybe you're a high crime market. Maybe education is really important in your market. So it's kind of knowing what's important in your market. And a bit of it is what's your newsroom's expectation. So I thought, well, I'm going to teach them how to do it if they don't know how to do that. And if I haven't been clear on this, then shame on me. So that's where I kind of came up with the reporter pitch. If you look at that, we actually have in teams where people pitch this, and it goes into one of the channels of reporter pitches we're looking for leads. Well, what exactly is a lead? That's kind of the first part of that. No one else has reported this yet. It's going to add perspective, or it's going to add context to an ongoing story. It's going to hold the powerful accountable. It's going to expose wrongdoing or system failure. It's happening right now. It measurably impacts a large portion of your audience. And that's an important word, measurably. How can we measure this? Or it challenges or explodes widely held assumptions like, wow, people didn't know that. Then they'll, I'm asking them, why is today the best day or night to pursue this story? What about the story specifically impacts a significant portion of the viewers? Who does this impact? Who is going to be the voice of this story? Who are you set up to interview? And what fresh or file video is relevant to this?
So Estelle, so you said this went into a Teams channel that you guys had. When did your reporters do this?
Some of them write it up maybe through the day, and then we'll go in the morning meeting. It's like, oh, I forgot to hit send. Some, maybe.
So you're planning in advance, is what?
Yeah, you're absolutely planning in advance, and some of it may be done the morning of, right? It's between 6:30 and 9:30 the next morning. News happens, so you have to be somewhat flexible on that. But for the most part,
what I'm getting at is this isn't something where if you're there's some advanced planning for this. And I mean, and I don't know how many people listening to this work in newsrooms where they are told to pitch in advance. If you're not, do it anyway, because it only helps you. Yes, your story pitch may change. Yes, it may not be approved, but this way you're not spending a portion of your day trying to find what the story is going to be, and then 2 hours later,
and the sand's just going down, right? And another thing too is, it's doing this allows you more time during the day to be creative. Mm-hmm. If you need to request a graphic, if you're doing a graphic, if you're doing a multi-part stand-up, if you're, all of those things make your work stand out. And I mean, I don't know anybody who can say, I got into this because I'm not a creative person. I mean, we all have that sense of creativity about us, right? And if we're doing the same thing every single day, it just becomes mundane. That creative side to us and we kind of lose the joy of what pulled us into this. I think the visual aspect of this to begin with. So you just go into the day knowing what you're going to do, and you're already thinking about that.
And it may seem overwhelming, the idea of answering these questions. However, my thought process is this will actually help you organize your life and help you go forward. I think, Estelle, I got this from you a couple of years ago. Maybe whenever I first started working for Gray. And, and I just thought, wow, it is a roadmap to how you should be pitching. I've always had a very clear definition of a story pitch. In my world, a story pitch is a hard news lead story that is not born of a planned event, meaning don't pitch the news, whatever news conference of the day. That's not born of a process. So don't tell me you're going to go to court. That can lead one of our newscasts. Now, do we cover those planned events? Yes. Do we go to court? Yes. But the story pitch part of that is if you've got to bring something extra into it. So I just feel like this is such a good roadmap to help you plan. And then what happens is you don't end up wasting your time chasing everything during the day. You know what you're doing, you go for it, and you can truly, I think, find so much more joy in the process of being a reporter if you're not freaking out because you don't know if you're going to have anything on the air at 4 o'clock.
It's really interesting. I agree with everything that you said there. When we first started this, we had producers that would say, well, I don't have a lead because so-and-so's interview didn't come through. And I can tell you now, when we go into this, the producers have access. We've all read these pitches before we go into that 9:30 meeting. And so the producers are, they may have some things to add. Producers pitch stories here too. But they may have some things to add, but it's like any question that they have, probably 90% of them are answered here. I think our reporters probably get fewer calls from producers during the day of how's your story going? How's your story going? How's your story going? It's that. So you're really, as a reporter, you're really doing a benefit to this. I've had a number of people that have moved on to bigger markets, and when they go on their job interviews, they were like, I pitched 2 stories, and everybody looked at me like, and they think that's what they're pretty sure that's what got them the job. Is if you can't pitch a story, if you're not in a newsroom that does enterprise reporting, I don't know how it could be a number 1 newsroom. I really just don't.
I totally agree. I mean, this is why we do what we do, and I truly believe in my heart of hearts, those that this is your key to the better jobs and the better markets. Lots of people, anyone can hold up that phone and show what's going on behind it, but this is how you give context. This is how you tell stories that matter. I don't believe anyone who gets into this business doesn't have, I want to change the world in it. Well, this is how you do it. This is a roadmap for doing that and making it into good journalism. So, and again, it may seem overwhelming at first. I think that's normal, at least in my time in this business. But once you get it, I mean, for those of you who may be watching this, but may be more experienced, this is also the pathway into a larger market or an investigative job. Because you know what an investigative reporter is? A really good reporter. It's so I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that, and it's one of the reasons I loved working with young people so much. If you start off and start your career doing this, you're going to be so much better off in the long term. Did you have anything else on this slide, or do you want to go to the next one, Estelle?
I think the last one is just kind of the closing slide. I put that cute.
Oh, look at there.
Yeah, yes.
All these fancy awards.
Well, the neat thing about this is, I'm going to say a little bit about this. These all came within the same year, and it was, my mother had passed away that year. And so, I kind of thought, she was always my biggest fan. So I took this picture and posted it, and I said, my mom would have been so proud of me. But all 3 of these came within the same year. So that's why that picture means a lot to me. Now I've got nothing I was going to say, but when it comes to like the entry level, we always hear about, it's hard to get your first job. It's hard to get your foot in the door. And I tell people it's really harder when you're going after your second job, because your first job, if you're entry level, everybody, there's some schools that, they do some things that others don't, but everybody's kind of at the same place. Depending on where you are at that first station, if you spent 2 years or 3 years there, and what the foundation of journalism is in that market and what you've learned, by the time that you go to your second station, I mean, you could be trying to get to Nashville, where there's somebody with 20 years experience or 15 years experience, or somebody who's come back to Nashville because that's their home. We've had a number of reporters and producers go directly from Augusta to Atlanta. And I believe that the story pitch is a big part of that. By the time you go to your second job, you're competing not with just people coming out of their first job. You're competing with so many more people. And it's a given that you can interview. It's a given that you're going to make slot. It's a given that you can pitch a story. So it's like everything that what I always say, people that, that kind of learn in their last year or sometimes their last 8 months, is you're really kind of making your mark, and you're really setting your style and setting yourselves above just what is the minimum of the day. Nobody wants to do the minimum.
Well,
Nobody wants to be just a mediocre reporter. So
it is also a testament to why you need to be kind of careful where you go. I mean, we see a lot of young people now, for those who may be entry level listening to this. It's like, oh, how big of a mark, like what I could probably get into a top 50, a top 75. You know what? You can, but if your reel's good enough. But however, are you learning what you need to learn? Are you in it to sprint to the big market, or are you in it to make a career of this? Are you in it to really make a difference in the world, to hold the powerful accountable? You got to think about that. And that's where you choose to go comes to play. I hear a lot from students who are like, you know what? I really just want to get into insert large market here, 40s, 50s, 60s market to start off. And I'm like, yeah, not at this station, because if they have the legacy of good journalism, then they're probably going to they're going to be competing against you're going to be competing against good journalists from smaller markets. So just really think about that when you go, is how are you trained, how are you going to learn, and is this market the right for me? Because again, Estelle's having people jump from Augusta to Atlanta. you know
knowing
does everyone
knowing
do
what I
that?
know now, knowing what I know now, if I was coming out of college, I would want to go work for Estelle. You
Well,
know, and shameless plug here for her, but you had 2 interns this past summer, and as a result of those interns, one's at Troy, one's Furman in South
Furman.
Carolina, in
Mhm.
Greenville, and both actually went to high school together. Is what's funny to me, and didn't know that they were getting the internships until they got there. But the one at Troy has led to so many questions by journalists there. Like a journalist there asked me, "What happens if I miss slot?" And that's a result of an internship in Augusta over the summer. But you know, if you have an opportunity to go to a station like Estelle's, by all
Do
means do
it.
so.
Oh, well,
And then
I appreciate that, guys. Thanks so much. We've all seen this sort of journalism go through a change. And I think, post COVID, we always talk about, the great resignation and the great redirection. And we a lot of times focus that on journalism. I think it's focused everywhere. We're just in journalism. So we hear that, and it seems to hit home. And, it is possible now for somebody straight out of college to go to a 50 market. But I wonder and worry about that person's well-being, 3 years into this. Are they going to burn out? I mean, a smaller market, that's the foundation. If you're in the right station, those people that you know and meet at your first market are going to be people that you have friendships with throughout your career. That first market is so important because, what's the example? It's like, do you want to fall in front of, 100,000, or do you want to fall in front of 1 million? We are a softer landing. We know that we're going to get people that we need to train, and we want to train up. And, that just doesn't happen as much, I think, for somebody who's one of the best and brightest and going to a bigger market. And I really worry about sort of their well-being, their foundation of what they're receiving. And, are they going to be overwhelmed in that position? And if that is the truth, then, somebody who really believes in journalism should be in journalism. They can burn out and flame out in 3 or 5 years. And I think none of us really want to see that.
Absolutely not. So for those of you that are watching this live, we're going to come out and take questions in a bit. For those of you who are watching us on the recorded version on YouTube, I put the email address for recruiting@gray.tv. We would love to chat with you, not just about jobs. We're journalists. We love to talk about journalism. So we are not a recruiting team made up of career recruiters. We're a recruiting team made up of journalists.